I'm Jason Miller. Tonight on the Evan Miller Report, a video has popped up online appearing to show UK jihadists trying to recruit people to join them in Iraq. Ukraine's President Petro Poroshenko has declared a week-long unilateral ceasefire in fighting with pro-Russian militants in the east of the country. A 13-year-old boy has been killed in the search for 3 Israeli teens feared abducted in the territory that has entered into its second week. And the Obama administration has decided to send millions of dollars to the countries of those children that are being housed in Texas and across the West Coast. We have a full report. All those stories, plus the news review of the week with Dan Butcher and Ken McClinton, plus Corey Evans.
Thank you as ever, Jay. A flash flood that struck the Black Sea resort town of Varna kills at least a dozen people. Paul Ryan blasts the boss of the IRS over his explanation over, quote, lost emails. Darden Restaurants, the owner of the Olive Garden, forecasts a full-year profit far below analysts' expectations. Sheriff Joe makes his way into lawsuits across America, and the making of a Saved by the Bell movie makes it into my entertainment news. All that and more coming up today on the Evan Miller Report, starting now.
Live from Southern California, this is the Evan Miller Report. Jason Miller with news and politics, Corey Evan with business and entertainment. This is the Evan Miller Report on SHR Media and Public Press Radio. Here now, Jason Miller.
And a very good evening to those of you joining us across the country on the SHR Media Networks, also live on Public Press Radio Live. Welcome to the program. I'm Jason Miller. Corey Evan, of course, will have that big story with the IRS and Paul Ryan going after the IRS commissioner. All those stories and more here on the program. But of course, we'd like to start off the program tonight with the news over in the UK. Most of MI5's casework is now involving tracking Britons fighting with extremist groups in the Middle East. This is according to the report by the BBC. The threat from British jihadists fighting in Syria is now the biggest priority for MI5, the British Security Service. It comes after footage emerged appearing to show UK jihadists trying to recruit people to join them in Iraq. The Home Office said that counter-terror police were working to get the video taken off the internet. Earlier it said it would not tolerate online terrorist videos after the footage, which has not yet been verified, was posted online by accounts linked to Islamic State of Iraq, or known as ISIS militants. ISIS has made rapid advances through Iraq in recent weeks, as you well know, ladies and gentlemen. And earlier this week, Prime Minister David Cameron said its fighters were plotting terror attacks on the UK. An estimated 400 to 500 UK fighters have been recruited by the group, which is engaged in fierce fighting with the Iraqi government forces. The footage features men sitting cross-legged in a semicircle with the black flag of ISIS behind. It cannot be verified, but according to BBC correspondent Paul Adams, he said it came from a social media accounts with no links to ISIS and probably has been built in the country of Syria. It appeared to show British jihadists intent on joining the fight in Iraq, said Paul Adams. Baha, Iraq's biggest refinery, is surrounded by the rebels, who say they have seized most of Tel Afar Airport. The U.S. said it will send some 300 military advisors to help the fight against insurgents. Alongside its military advances, ISIS has mounted a parallel social media campaign. Sasha Holosvaku co-chairs the European Union Working Group on the Internet Radicalization, said ISIS was using social media to compete with other radical groups. I think that the strategy they're putting in play right now is about brand recognition, she said to the BBC. The point really, I think, for ISIS is claiming a piece of the market. And they've done that incredibly successfully. The Home Office in Britain said, quote, "We do not tolerate the existence of online terrorist and extremist propaganda which directly influences people who are vulnerable to radicalization. We already work closely with the internet industry to remove terrorist material hosted in the UK or overseas." The Home Office said it wanted to further restrict access to terrorist material and use family-friendly filters to block other extremist content. The Muslim Council of Britain condemned the violence of ISIS and warned young Britons that traveling to Iraq or Syria will not help the people of those countries. Mr. Cameron has warned of a threat to the UK if an extremist Islamic regime is created in central Iraq, while Downing Street said 65 people have been arrested in the past 18 months for Syria-related jihadist activities. And staying in Britain, we'll have more on the situation in Britain when it comes to their passports later on in the program. But in the meantime, let's move over to Ukraine tonight, where in a major development, Ukraine's President Petro Poroshenko has declared a week-long unilateral ceasefire in fighting with pro-Russian militants in the east of the country. Heavy fighting had been continuing between Ukrainian government forces and pro-Russian rebels, with new reports of military hardware entering Ukraine. The ceasefire has been expected ahead of the implementation of a peace plan. However, correspondents say pro-Russian insurgents seem to have no intention of laying down their arms. Mr. Pronovosko said the ceasefire doesn't mean we fight back against any aggression towards our groups, but that it was intended to give rebels time to disarm. "We will do everything to protect the territory of our state," he said. End of quote. Ukrainian news agencies quote a senior rebel commander as saying the insurgents would not lay down their arms until government troops had left the region. The ceasefire comes a day after Mr. Pronovosko held his second phone conversation this week with Russia's President Vladimir Putin. The peace plan proposed by Mr. Pronovosko promises to decentralize power and hold early local and parliamentary elections. It also proposes the creation of a 6-mile buffer zone on the Ukrainian-Russian border and a safe corridor for pro-Russian separatists to leave the conflict areas. And moving back to the Middle East tonight, Israeli soldiers killed a 13-year-old Palestinian in clashes during West Bank raids Friday, according to hospital officials, as a search for three Israeli teens feared abducted in the territory entered its second week. 3 other Palestinians were seriously wounded by army gunfire during raids in 4 towns and refugee camps. Friday's death raised to the number of Palestinians shot dead by troops during search operations this week. The 3 seminary students disappeared June 12th while hitchhiking in the West Bank of Israel, and Israel has blamed the Islamic militant Hamas group for the apparent abduction, but has offered no proof. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has used the search to promote 2 other objectives: 1, a new crackdown on Hamas, and an attempt to discredit the Palestinian Unity Government formed earlier this month by Western-backed President Mahmoud Abbas, which is supported by Hamas. Hamas has praised the abduction of the teenagers, but has not claimed responsibility for it. The group has abducted Israelis in the past to press for the release of thousands of Palestinians held in Israeli prisons. In Hebron, families of the Palestinians arrested recently in Israel raids protested after weekly Muslim prayers. They gestured with 3 fingers, 1 for each missing teen, in a sign of their support for the abduction. The gesture has become popular on social media among Palestinians and others who support the abduction of the teens. Over the past week, thousands of Israeli troops have searched hundreds of locations in the West Bank and arrested more than 300 Palestinians, many from Hamas. The Israeli military said it conducted raids in 4 towns and refugee camps early Friday, not each Friday, that's early Friday, detaining 25 suspects and searching about 200 locations. The army said it searched 9 institutions linked to Hamas and confiscated materials. In one raid in the town of Dura near Hebron, Palestine, youths threw stones at soldiers, drawing army fire. A hospital official who spoke on condition of anonymity because he was not authorized to talk to the media said a 13-year-old Mohammed Douadine was killed by a bullet in the chest. The army also opened fire during a raid at the Quality refugee camp where 3 Palestinians were seriously wounded, said Omar Batwa, director of the Ramallah's hospital. All right, and moving on tonight, the founder of the WikiLeaks website, Julian Assange, says he fears for the safety of his family. Speaking at the Ecuadorian embassy in London, Mr. Assange said unspecified individuals have made threats against his children and his mother. He complained that he had been unable to see them in 4 years. Mr. Assange took refuge. Excuse me, ladies and gentlemen. Mr. Assange took refuge at the Ecuadorian embassy about 2 years ago to avoid extradition to Sweden. The authorities in Stockholm want to question him over allegations by 2 women of sexual assault. Mr. Assange said he would remain in the embassy until the impasse over his future was broken. He said his lawyers had advised him there was still a serious risk he would be extradited to the United States if he gave up political asylum. It would be foolish to relinquish my asylum in light of what happened to Chelsea, Mr. Manning, he said. I refuse to say the female name of Manning on this program, ladies and gentlemen. Of course, Manning, an American soldier formerly known as Bradley, as I referenced to earlier, has been sentenced to 35 years in prison in the U.S. for passing thousands of secret documents to the WikiLeaks website. The leaks caused intense embarrassment of the U.S. and other governments. All right, folks, I'll have more on the House approving limits on the NSA snooping in a couple minutes. But for now, I'm going to go ahead and send it over to Corey Evan up in our Los Angeles newsroom for a look at some of the day's other news, including Congressman Paul Ryan going after the IRS commissioner. Corey, pray tell.
Thank you very much, Jay. At least a dozen people have been killed by flash floods which had struck the Black Sea resort town of Varna. According to the Daily Mail out of the UK, authorities have declared an emergency after torrential rain swept away cars, destroyed houses, and forced people to scramble onto rooftops to avoid the raging torrents. Police in the northeastern resort town confirmed they have recovered 10 bodies from the area after Thursday's deluge. 2 further bodies were found in the northern city of Dobrik. Varna's mayor, Ivan Porne, confirmed that a state of emergency has been declared in the town's low-lying district of Asprohovo. Speaking to local radio, Mayor Portnes said, quote, "The tragedy is enormous. I am here on the street in a suburb of Asprohovo. The street is not here. The houses are not here. There are cars on top of each other," unquote. Of course, hundreds of cars were destroyed as the raging floodwaters carried them down the street. Floods also disrupted water and electricity services across the region as engineers struggled to reconnect supplies. Regional Police Chief Nikolay Kalchev said that 10 bodies were found to have been swept away by floodwaters late Thursday. He couldn't say how many more people were missing after torrential rain flooded large parts of the coastal town. The heavy rains followed weeks of drought. Civil defense authorities believe that up to 200 homes have been either severely damaged or destroyed. In the Kilofarevo area of central Bulgaria, 11 people were evacuated from their houses by firefighters following heavy rains and thunderstorms. Weather forecasters said a month's rain fell in Varna over the past 24 hours, with further storms expected to hit the north and eastern Bulgaria later today. Prime Minister Plamen Orosharsky, who arrived in Varna early today, called the flooding, quote, "a huge tragedy." The government has announced Monday will be a national day of mourning. According to the AP, the U.S. State Department has downgraded Thailand, Malaysia, and Venezuela to its list of the world's worst centers of human trafficking, opening up the countries to possible sanctions and dumping them in the same category as North Korea and Syria. The 3 countries were all downgraded to the lowest Tier 3 status in the U.S. State Department's 2014 Trafficking in Persons report, as they did not fully comply with the minimum standards for the elimination of trafficking. Thai officials repeatedly expressed confidence their country would be upgraded, submitting a 78-page report to the U.S. government in April to make its case. The downgrades could cause some multinational companies to reconsider investments in industries accused of using trafficked labor, such as fisheries, a lucrative business in Thailand, the world's largest exporter of shrimp. The countries could also lose U.S. non-humanitarian and non-trade-related aid, and they could face U.S. opposition to help from international institutions such as the International Monetary Fund and World Bank. The report said the majority of trafficking victims in Thailand, quote, tens of thousands by conservative estimates, were migrants from neighboring countries, quote, forced, coerced, or defrauded into labor or exploited in the sex trade, unquote. A significant number were trafficked into the fishing industry, garment production, and domestic work. The State Department also cited media reports of, quote, trafficking-related complicity by Thai civilian and Navy personnel in crimes involving the exploitation of Rohingya Muslims who have fled Myanmar by the tens of thousands over the past year. Those reports included a Reuters story in December that documented a clandestine Thai policy to remove Rohingya from immigration detention centers and deliver them to traffickers and smugglers waiting at sea. Many Rohingya were then ferried back to brutal trafficking camps in Thailand, where some died. The State Department said that not only had the government, quote, systematically failed to prosecute trafficking into the fishing industry, but the Thai Navy has also filed defamation charges against 2 journalists who reprinted reports of complicity of civilian and naval personnel in exploitation of Rohingya asylum seekers from Myanmar. That was a reference to criminal defamation charges filed by Thailand's Navy against 2 journalists at Phuket, a small English-language news website based in Phuket, which published selected excerpts from a July Reuters report. The report, based on interviews with people smugglers and more than 24 survivors of boat voyages, revealed how some Thai naval security forces worked systematically with smugglers to profit from the surge in Rohingya fleeing Myanmar to escape religious persecution. We may not be the biggest fans of Muslim religion here at the Evan Miller Report, but I must say that hearing of these kind of things going on in Thailand is absolutely disgusting, and I'm sure Jason can agree with me that much. Back on domestic soil, according to the AP, authorities were searching Friday for a gunman who shot and wounded 3 people at the end of a benefit concert at the popular Red Rocks Outdoor Amphitheater near Denver. No motive was released, but Jefferson County Sheriff spokesman Mark Techmeyer said the attack did not appear to be random. The victims' injuries were not life-threatening. Their names were not released. The shooting occurred Thursday night at the rap concert benefiting several groups, including the Gang Rescue and Support Project of Denver and 2 other organizations. Quote, "We want to know what's going on so we can help out in any way," said Cisco Gallardo, director of the Gang Rescue Group. Quote, "There could have been a prior beef, prior problems," unquote. The injured people were in a white SUV and drove themselves from Red Rocks to a Denver intersection about 15 miles away, but it wasn't clear why, Techmeyer said. They were eventually stopped by Denver police and taken to a hospital. Investigators didn't know if more people had been in the SUV before police stopped it. The amphitheater seats up to 9,500 people, but Red Rocks officials did not immediately know how many people attended the concert featuring Nas, Schoolboy Q, and Flying Lotus. Investigators stopped and questioned each car as it was leaving the venue. Traffic was chaotic and slow, but, quote, "We had a shooter out there," Techmeyer said. Witnesses were interviewed until early Friday. The amphitheater and surrounding park in the foothills west of Denver are popular with joggers and sightseers. Most of the park had been reopened, but the area of the shooting remained sealed off. And according to Fox News, incredulous lawmakers tore into IRS Commissioner John Koskinen over the agency's claims that subpoenaed emails of ex-official Lois Lerner and other employees are gone forever because of a hard drive being destroyed. Quote, "This is unbelievable," Representative Paul Ryan from Wisconsin angrily told Koskinen. Quote, "That's your problem. Nobody believes you." Koskinen responded, quote, "I have a long career. That's the first time anyone said I don't believe you," unquote. Quote, "I don't believe you," Ryan shot back again. Koskinen set a defiant tone during his testimony before the House Ways and Means Committee, telling lawmakers he felt no need for the agency to apologize amid accusations of a cover-up in the targeting scandal of conservative groups. Republican lawmakers had demanded the emails between Lerner and other government officials, including at the White House, be turned over to determine whether there was a coordinated effort to stymie conservative groups prior to the 2012 elections. Quote, "I don't think an apology is owed," he said. "We haven't lost an email since the start of this investigation," unquote. That didn't sit well with Chairman David Kemp of Michigan, who pressed the commissioner on the timeline of events and accused the agency of, quote, "keeping secrets." GOP lawmakers are furious after learning a week ago that many Lerner emails from a 2-year period supposedly have disappeared. Committee Republicans now say that the IRS may have known about this for months, and that the agency may have lost emails from another 6 employees. Quote, "The IRS in charge of hundreds of millions of taxpayers' information. And you're now saying your technology system was so poor that years' worth of emails are forever unrecoverable, Camp charged? How does that put anyone at ease? How far would the excuse, "I lost it," get with the IRS for an average American trying to file their yearly taxes who may have lost a few receipts, unquote? The tone and exchanges between lawmakers and the commissioner frequently became heated. Earlier this week, Senator Orrin Hatch of Utah said he's been told that Lerner's hard drive was simply destroyed. Quote, "They just got rid of it," he told Fox News. "It looks really bad, and I've got to say it looks like a cover-up to me," unquote. Hatch and Senator Ron Wyden of Oregon are leading a bipartisan investigation into the Senate Finance Committee into the targeting scandal, separate from the House Ways and Means probe. House and Senate Republicans, though, have common questions for the commissioner and the rest of the agency. Hatch fired off a letter to Koskinen on Thursday, voicing concerns that he met with him on Monday, yet the commissioner and his staff did not mention that emails from 6 other employees might be missing. Lerner's computer crashed sometime around June 13, 2011, according to emails provided to Congress. She first learned about the Tea Party reviews on June 29th, according to the Inspector General. Koskinen told Congress that Lerner's hard drive was unavailable to them because it had been recycled. The IRS said last week it became aware of the missing emails in February of this year. The IRS did not know whether the other computer crashes have resulted in lost emails as well. It also will not say how often its computers fail and lose data. And if you can't stand the heat, stay out of the kitchen, because Darden Restaurants, facing shareholder resistance to the planned sale of its struggling Red Lobster seafood chain, forecast a full-year profit far below analysts' expectations. According to Reuters, Starboard Value LP launched a fight to take over Darden's board last month, a week after the company said it planned to sell Red Lobster to Golden Gate Capital for $2.1 billion. The activist investors called the deal a, quote, "destructive transaction" that ignored shareholder rights and said it would nominate a full 12-candidate slate for election at the company's September 30th annual meeting. Starboard, backed by Barrington Capital, has said it had identified other ways to save costs, boost revenue, and revamp the company that would not require the sale. Starboard owns 6.2% of Darden, while Barrington represents shareholders holding more than 2%. Darden said on Friday the sale was on track, and it expects to receive $1.6 billion after tax and costs. The company also said it plans to reposition its flagship Olive Garden chain through remodels, menu additions, a new logo, and advertising. Shares of the largest operator of full-service restaurants in the U.S. fell as much as 4.5%. The company says it expects Olive Garden's same-restaurant sales to remain unchanged or rise by up to 1% for the year ending May 2015. Olive Garden will account for about 60% of Darden's revenue after the sale of Red Lobster. Darden, which also owns the Seasons 52 and Capital Grille chains, also forecasts full-year adjusted earnings of $2.22 a share, optimistically up to $2.30 a share, compared with the average analyst estimate of $2.79, according to Thomson Reuters. Darden's same restaurant sales have been lagging those of fast casual rivals such as the less expensive Chipotle Mexican Grill. Same restaurant sales fell 3.5% at Olive Garden and about 6% at Red Lobster for the fourth quarter ended May 25th. Net income fell to $86.5 million, or 65 cents a share, from $133 million, or $1 a penny, a year earlier. Analysts had expected 94 cents. Costs related to Darden's plan to separate Red Lobster and other changes hurt profit by 19 cents a share. Now over to Detroit, where, according to CNN, Governor Rick Snyder will sign a series of bills today to give the city the state funds, a key component of Detroit's plan to wrap up its bankruptcy reorganization later this year. The money's part of more than $800 million that the city will receive over the next 20 years as part of a so-called grand bargain to help it climb out of its financial hole. The money will help preserve most pension payments to city retirees, as well as prevent the city from having to sell off the art in the Detroit Institute of Arts, the city-owned world-class museum. Other grand bargain funds are coming from a consortium of charitable foundations as well as labor groups and businesses, including automakers GM, Ford, and Chrysler. Quote, "It's another step on getting Detroit on the path of being a great, exciting city again," Snyder told CNN Friday. "Detroit is one of the hottest places to live in the country. There are a lot of great things going on." Yeah, right. Of course, they say the economy in parts of Detroit has shown a resurgence in recent years with the building boom and rising real estate prices downturn, But the city's finances are still struggling with $18 billion in debt, poor city services, and large swaths of the city filled with abandoned properties that are not paying taxes. The state bailout was controversial, with critics arguing the city wasn't doing enough to pay creditors on its own. Americans for Prosperity, a public interest group funded by the Koch brothers that advocates for smaller government, vowed to work for the defeat of any legislature to vote for the package. But Snyder and other Republican leaders in the state argued the deal was necessary to protect the state from being on the hook for the billions in underfunded pension plans in the city. The state constitution promises protection of those plans. Quote, "This isn't a bailout, this is a settlement," said Snyder. "It really allows the bankruptcy case to move forward faster," unquote. Internationally, according to the AP, engineering giants Siemens of Germany and Mitsubishi Heavy Industries of Japan reacted quickly to General Electric Company's sweetened bid for France's Alstom SA, raising their own combined offer by more than €1 billion. The two companies said in a statement Friday they were raising their cash offer by €1.2 billion to €8.2 billion, which increases their overall valuation of Alstom Energy's business by €400 million to $14.6 billion. Siemens hopes to acquire Alstom's gas business entirely, while Mitsubishi would take a 10% stake in Alstom under their proposal. GE, meantime, has bid $12.35 billion for Alstom's entire power business. On Thursday, it added new guarantees on sensitive concerns over jobs and decision-making while leaving the cash value unchanged. And with that, I'll go ahead and send it back.
Thank you very much, Corey. Corey Evan with some of the day's other news. Just a reminder on the markets today. The Dow Jones Industrial Average closed 16,947.08, up 15%. And the NASDAQ closed 4,368, up 20% today. Another market day of record-breaking close on the markets for today. All right, folks, we're going to go ahead and take we're going to take a break here on the program, but when we come back...
Thank you as ever, Jay.
Whoops, sorry, wrong button. That's the right button. But when we come back, we'll have much more on the House of Representatives banding together in a cross-party vote to pass legislation that would curb electronic snooping by the NSA. Also tonight, we'll have an update on the passport office in London having a backlog of over 50,000 applications. All that plus the United States sending millions of dollars to those countries that have those children coming over the Texas border. We'll have those stories and more. You're listening to the Evan Miller Report.
Conservative media done right. You're listening to the SHR Media Network.
Let's get back to the Evan Miller Report. You're listening to the Evan Miller Report on SHR Media and Pundit Press Radio.
Darcy here grew up riding horses.
I'm a cowgirl.
A tough cowgirl, battling a rare inoperable brain tumor. St. Jude Children's Research Hospital created a new treatment that's shrinking her tumor. We're taking bold steps to help save her life.
Better than your step.
Never wear sandals on a farm.
Give thanks for the healthy kids in your life and give to those who are not. Go to stjude.org or shop wherever you see the St. Jude logo.
In a world controlled by corrupt politicians,
You got a business. You didn't build that.
a team of ordinary men emerge from the ashes to give voice to the voiceless and hope to the hopeless. Sackhead Sean.
Dude, I'm not saying calf for the stupid pro.
Sackhead Clint.
All good friends of ours usually show up drunk.
Also starring Sacco as the producer.
I'm a little bit drunk, 'cause I'm drinking.
They are the Sackheads Radio Show. Every Wednesday at 8 p.m. Pacific on shrmedia.com.
Some of America's bravest warriors are returning home wounded. Here's one of them. My name is Norberto Lara. I served for 11 years in the United States Army. While I was on a combat patrol in Baqaba, Iraq, a rocket-propelled grenade took my arm off at the shoulder. When I came home, I felt alone. My family was around me, but I couldn't talk to them about what I'd seen and what I'd done. I remember just thinking, man, the way I am right now, I don't want to live. I was discharged from the Army, and I've been working with the Wounded Warrior Project since 2007. You don't have to be severely wounded to be with the Wounded Warrior Project. We do have a lot of guys that have post-traumatic stress disorder. Being able to share your story, I guess it kind of helps you wrap your mind around what did happen over there. Just because you have left the military doesn't mean your life is over. Because when these guys are coming home, I'm kind of leading and training them. Instead of for combat, I'm leading and training them to heal. If I come away with anything from Wounded Warrior Project, it's them giving my life back. My name is Norby, and yes, I do suffer from post-traumatic stress disorder, but I'm okay.
Don't suffer in silence. Contact WoundedWarriorProject.org.
Conservative media done right. You're listening to the SHR Media Network.
Let's get back to the Evan Miller Report on SHR Media and Pundit Press Radio.
And welcome back to the Evan Miller Report. Jason Miller here with you. And by the way, I am in the SHR Media chat room tonight. So go to shrmedia.com, click on the chat room button. Love to have you join us in the chat room tonight. I've posted some of our stories that we have already reported on tonight, like the Syria terrorist fighters in the UK, the Ukrainian President Poroshenko declaring a unilateral ceasefire, Israeli troops, of course, finding those kidnapped teens, and of course WikiLeaks founder Julian Assange is fearing for his family's safety. All those available on the chat room, and of course on our Facebook page, facebook.com/the Evan Miller Report. Have a like on us, please. We would certainly appreciate it, and share us to all your friends out there. All right, folks, moving on to that story from the NSA tonight. Members of the U.S. House of Representatives banded together in a cross-party line vote to pass legislation that would curb electronic snooping. The measure would bar the National Security Agency from collecting America's personal online information without a warrant. It was added on Thursday night to a $570 billion defense spending bill. The move follows revelations that the NSA mass harvested data on telephone calls and snooped on foreign leaders. The American people are sick of being spied on, said Congressman Thomas Massey, the amendment sponsor. The amendment added to the defense bill in a 293 to 123 vote on Thursday also prohibits the NSA and CIA from accessing commercial technology products, which some politicians have described as government backdoor for snooping. Leaked documents provided to the UK Guardian newspaper indicates the NSA intercepted computer network devices, such as routers, servers, and embedded them with backdoor surveillance tools. They were then sent to customers around the world. Technology companies, including Google, were part of a coalition which urged support for the House provision. Earlier this year, the House passed the USA Freedom Act that would limit the NSA's bulk data collection and storage of some Americans' landline telephone call records, but some members of Congress complained the legislation was not strict enough. The House is expected to pass the defense bill on Friday, but the fate of the spying curbs is unclear, as they have yet to be written into the Senate version of the defense spending bill. Congress has attempted to restrict government surveillance after revelations last year by fugitive U.S. intelligence leader Edward Snowden showed widespread snooping. Last year, Mr. Snowden fed a trove of secret NSA documents to news outlets, including the Washington Post and the aforementioned Guardian newspaper. Among other things, the leaks detailed the NSA's practice of harvesting data on millions of telephone calls made in the U.S. and around the world, and revealed the agency had snooped on foreign leaders. The revelations have sparked a debate in the U.S. over the appropriate role of the NSA and the extent to which it should be authorized to conduct such broad surveillance. President Obama has asked the Congress to rein in the program by barring the NSA from storing phone call data on its own and requiring it to seek a court order to access telecom companies' records. Mr. Snowden, meanwhile, who had fled in the U.S. in May 2013, has been living under temporary asylum in Russia. Alright, and moving on to that story in the UK we teased earlier, the passport office in London is having to deal with a backlog of 53,000 applications, higher than previously thought. The agency released the new figures after pressure from the Home Affairs Committee Chairman Keith Yeast. He said the data provided the backlog was caused by the closure of overseas posts, pardon the interruption there, and transfer of work to the UK, saying the Labour MP said, quote, the same Labour MP, Keith Vaz said, quote, "This decision was clearly the wrong one and has been poorly managed. The public has been badly let down." He also accused the passport office of profiting from the public hardship by making a surplus of £13 on each application. Passport Office Chief Executive Paul Pugh this week apologized to the public for the delays that put thousands of people's holiday plans at risk. He told MPs on the Home Affairs Committee that his office knew a surge in demand was on the way because the Foreign Office had decided to close 7 posts in foreign embassies. He's expected to have to deal with 350,000 more applications. But even though that figure could be closer to 400,000, he said adequate preparations had been made. He admitted the agency had failed to predict the scale of the increase, but insisted it was just not down to the extra work from the closure of the overseas centers, but other factors, which have yet to be identified. The report released by Passport Office identifies a sudden surge in demand for passports in January this year in the UK, 70,000 higher at the same time last year. Mr. Pugh spoke about this when he was being grilled by the committee and said he had added extra shifts and redeployed staff to cope with it. But Mr. Vaz, the Labour MP, who we quoted earlier, says the spike should have acted up as a wake-up call to managers. A comparison of the 2013 and 2014 figures for January would have told the management of Her Majesty's Passport Office and ministers all they needed to know, said Mr. Vaz. The 70,000 additional passport applications received 5 months ago should have provided the wake-up call. It's baffling why immediate action was not taken to alleviate the impending disaster that has now engulfed Her Majesty's Passport Office, Mr. Vaz said. The PCS trade union blames job cuts for the failure to cope with demand and says that rather than take on additional staff, managers forced officials to work longer hours, resulting in, quote, burnout. Last week, Prime Minister David Cameron told MPs up to 30,000 straightforward passport applications, mostly adult renewals, had not been processed within the 3-week target time. The figures released by the Passport Office show that 23,000 non-straightforward applications, including overseas and first passports, may not have been dealt with in time either. It has also been revealed that the agency has spent £2.2 million on overtime for staff since the beginning of the year to deal with a huge surge in applications in the spring. In a separate move, the Home Office has published a list of countries that have agreed to accept UK passports that have been extended for 12 months. British nationals living overseas are being offered an automatic 1-year extension when they apply to renew their passports in a bid to ease the pressure on staff dealing with the backlog. Some of those countries include Albania, Cambodia, France, Libya, the Uganda, the Ukraine, and Venezuela, to name a few. Well, of course, we'll post this full story to see if we get the, so if any of your relatives are affected by this issue in the Passport Office in London, on our Facebook page, facebook.com/The Evan Miller Report. Also, we'll put a post up in our chat room for those of you who are listening to us live tonight in the chat room. That is being posted as I speak on there, and then of course we will post it on our Evan Miller Report Facebook page for you to check out. Also, we'll work with the Sackheads Radio, SHR Media, to get that link for that story posted up onto the webpage. Alright folks, and moving on tonight to the United States is boosting aid and speeding up deportations to cope with the growing number of migrants from Central America. Guatemala, El Salvador, and Honduras will also be receiving millions of dollars to combat, quote, gang violence. The money will also be used to help citizens repatriated from the U.S., also known here in the United States as deportation. But continuing with the story, ladies and gentlemen, the White House said it will also step up the removal of illegal immigrants from the country and open additional detention centers. But in a statement, it added it would protect the rights of those seeking asylum. From October 2013 to June 15th, 52,000 unaccompanied children arrived on the U.S. border with Mexico, according to the U.S. Homeland Security Department, though those numbers may not be true because illegal immigrant children and illegal immigrants themselves are still crossing the border, according to sources close to the Evan Miller report. The agency is looking for more facilities to house the minors and has said it will bring more immigration lawyers to the border to deal with the influx. It is believed that the criminal violence is responsible for the surge of Central American migrants, especially from Guatemala, Honduras, and El Salvador. But the U.S. has also begun a public relations campaign to clarify a recent policy change that stopped deportations of people who had previously arrived in the U.S. illegally as children, called the DREAM Act. U.S. Ambassador to Mexico, Anthony Wayne, said yesterday, quote, all who enter the United States without proper immigration status are subject to deportation proceedings. Simply put, there is no reward for the great risk to which these children are being subjected. Celia Munez, the White House Domestic Policy Director, said in a conference call that the U.S. is trying to deal with the misinformation that is being deliberately planted by criminal organizations, by smuggling networks, about what people can expect when they come to the United States. On Friday, the Obama administration, as I stated, also announced $93 million in new programs to reduce violence in that region. The funding includes $40 million to reduce gang membership in Guatemala, $25 million to build youth outreach centers in El Salvador, and $18.5 million to build youth outreach centers in Honduras. Oh my goodness, I believe Ken McClinton is going to have a cow when he joins us for the news review at the top of the hour. Because remember, opening up resource centers and youth outreach centers, that's what the social liberal Democrats love to do when they know there's problems in communities. Instead of acting on the problem, they open outreach centers. So that's more to come. This as U.S. Vice President Joe Biden arrived in Guatemala on Friday to discuss the proposals within the country. President Oda Perez Moldoy, Salvadorian President Sanchez, and senior officials from Honduras and Mexico. Earlier this month, President Obama described the growing influx of unaccompanied children migrating to the United States as a, quote, urgent humanitarian situation. Yeah, Mr. President, sure it is, that you're not taking care of it. Why do you think the governor of Texas is sending down resources down there that are costing $1.3 million a week? The White House, I also should state, ladies and gentlemen, has asked Congress for an extra $1.4 billion to cope with the situation. The situation, Mr. President, I should add, that you have allowed to happen. And the leader of the U.S. House of Representatives has urged President Obama on Friday to send troops to the Mexican border to help deal with the situation of unaccompanied minors from Central America, calling it, quote, a national security risk and humanitarian crisis. In a letter to the president, Speaker Boehner blamed the Obama administration's policies for the huge increase in children making their way here from the countries we mentioned earlier, Guatemala, El Salvador, and Honduras, and said the president must act. The Speaker's letter underscores that the issue has increasingly become a political problem for the Obama administration, which had hoped to spend the spring and summer pressuring House Republicans to pass comprehensive immigration legislation, but is now increasingly occupied with the unaccompanied minor issue. Boehner made no mention in this letter of the immigration legislation, and the House appears to have no inclination to move on it, particularly after the surprise primary defeat last week of Majority Leader Eric Cantor at the hands of conservative Dave Pratt, who who accused him of supporting amnesty. Boehner said the troops could help ensure the safety of children and their families, and he said the State Department should work with the Central American nations to help processing times to return children and families to their countries to make sure that people know the dangers of heading north. And Michelle Obama, First Lady Michelle Obama, but we just call her Michelle Obama on this program. I don't have a problem with it. If anybody has a problem with it, you can contact me in the chat room or on our Facebook page. Okay. Wednesday, in the rotunda of the National Archives, First Lady Michelle Obama turned a swearing-in ceremony for 50 new American citizens waving U.S. flags into a political speech on immigration reform. She said, quote, "Today in Washington, folks are debating whether or not to fix our immigration system, even though just everyone agrees that it is broken." Michelle Obama said, "I want you all to know that my husband has made this top legislative priority because at the end of the day, this fight isn't just about principles, it's about real people." End of quote. President Obama's Of course, ladies and gentlemen, President Obama immigration policy has come under fire recently because of the humanitarian crisis on the border. And I'm just reading a report here. And so Michelle Obama is spitting in the face of immigrants who took the legal path to citizenship by promoting those who are breaking laws and making it hard for all immigrants in the U.S. So, folks, it makes me wonder if the Obamas even think about who they're, excuse the term, pissing off when pushing their own political agenda. So what side are you actually on, First Lady? Do you agree with your husband or do you not agree with your husband? We'll leave you, ladies and gentlemen, to be the judge on that. All right, folks, we're going to go ahead and take another short break on the program. When we come back, keep hitting that button. But when we come back on the program, Corey Evan will have today's lawsuits across America and your entertainment report. Plus, coming up at 8 Eastern, 5 Pacific, for those of you who listen live tonight, it is the news review. That happens every Friday here on the Evan Miller Report with Dan Butcher, the editor-in-chief at Pundit Press. Also, the exceptional conservative himself, Ken McClinton, will be in the house as well to review this week's news stories. I'm Jason Miller. You're listening to the Evan Miller Report, and we'll be right back.
Conservative media done right. You're listening to the SHR Media Network.
You're listening to the Evan Miller Report on SHR Media and Pundit Press Radio.
Hey y'all, Cedric the Entertainer here with Niecy Nash, taking a break from shooting The Soul Man to introduce you to Patience.
Hi.
Patience is a patient at St. Jude Children's Research Hospital.
Families never receive a bill from St. Jude for anything because all a family should worry about is helping their child live.
St. Jude won't give up until they end childhood cancer, sickle cell, and other deadly diseases.
Because of you, there is St. Jude.
Learn more at stjude.org.
This is Tammy Jackson, inviting you to join me on The Tammy Jackson Show every Tuesday night at 7 p.m. Pacific on the 405radio.com. Put down that remote and tune into the show that covers politics, guns and the Second Amendment, religious liberties, sanctity of life, the military, and more. I host newsworthy guests and work hard to be a conservative radio show that's not like all the others. So save Tuesday nights at 7 p.m. Pacific for me, Tammy Jackson, on the 405media.com.
Conservative media done right. You're listening to the SHR Media Network.
Let's get back to the Evan Miller Report on SHR Media and Pundit Press Radio.
And welcome back to the Evan Miller Report Hillary Clinton's successful 1975 legal defense of an accused rapist has surfaced again, with the victim angered over a tape of Hillary Clinton chuckling over her courtroom tactics in the case, lashing out at the potential Democratic presidential candidate. Hillary Clinton took me through hell, the victim told the Daily Beast in an emotional interview published today. The woman said that if she saw Clinton today, she would say, quote, "I realize the truth now, the heart of what you have done to me, and you're supposed to be for women? You call that blank for women, what you have done to me? And I heard you on tape laughing," end of quote. The name of the woman, who is now 52 years old, was withheld for privacy reasons. She decided to speak out after hearing never-before-heard audio tapes released by the Washington Free Beacon earlier this week of Hillary Clinton talking about the trial. In the recordings dubbed the Hillary tapes, nicely named, I should say. Back to the story, though. Clinton is heard laughing as she describes how she succeeded at getting her court-appointed client a lighter sentence despite suggesting she knew he was guilty, saying, quote, "He took a lie detector test. I had him take a polygraph, which he passed, which forever destroyed my faith in polygraphs," Clinton said about her client in the tapes, which were initially recorded but never used in the early 1980s. The rape case has been investigated more than once, but with Clinton reconsidering a presidential run, is again commanding the headlines. Here's some. So, ladies and gentlemen, Hillary Clinton, do you really want her as president of the United States in 2016? Because really, look at it. Comparison: President Obama now, Hillary Clinton in 2016. Comparison: they're pretty much the same boat. Who are we going to support? You make the call. All right, folks, it's time to send it over to Corey Evan, and he has tonight's Lawsuits Across America.
And now it's time for Lawsuits Across America. The cases are real. All rise for the Honorable Corey Evan.
Thank you as ever, Pat. Ladies and gentlemen, please be seated. Come to order. Lawsuits is now in session. First item on the docket today, immigrant rights advocates in Maricopa County, Arizona filed a lawsuit Wednesday challenging business raids by Sheriff Joe Arpaio's office that have led to the arrest of hundreds of immigrant workers on charges of using fake or stolen IDs to get jobs. The lawsuit alleges immigrants living in the U.S. illegally have been singled out in such cases, while only a small number of employers have had court cases brought against them on allegations of illegal hiring. The advocates aren't seeking any money, and instead are asking a federal judge to conclude that a state law banning employers from hiring immigrants living in the U.S. illegally is discriminatory and conflicts with federal law. Son of a Biden! They're seeking court order prohibiting Arpaio from enforcing that law. Arpaio's office, the only police agency in the state that has raided businesses in enforcement of the employment law, has conducted 83 business raids since the law took effect in 2008, leading to the arrests of more than 700 immigrants who were in the country illegally and 3 managers. Only 3 of the state's 144,000 private businesses have had civil cases filed against them. The sheriff vowed to continue the raids despite the lawsuit's allegations that the tactic is discriminatory. He drew no distinction between people who steal identities for the purposes of taking other people's money and those who use fake or stolen IDs to get jobs. Quote, "It's a violation of the law to steal someone's identification," Arpaio said. "I don't care what the reason is," unquote. And nor should you, Sheriff Joe. Immigrant rights supporters gathered outside Arpaio's office at midday Wednesday carrying signs that said, quote, "No more raids," with a crude portrayal of Arpaio holding either a billy club or a sword. The raids are a key element of Arpaio's signature immigration efforts. A year ago, his office was found by a federal judge to have systematically racially profiled Latinos in its regular traffic and immigration patrols. The sheriff vigorously disputes the profiling ruling and has filed an appeal. The employment law was passed as Arizona's immigration issue had reached a political boiling point, and advocates for cracking down on immigrants in the country illegally sought to target employers who are blamed with fueling the nation's border woes. All I can say about this one is,
you're whipping a dead horse, muchachos!
I mean, if you're in the country illegally, why should you be allowed to get a job here? You're taking our taxpayer money here! So Sheriff Joe, feel free to keep going. That's my ruling in this case. Next up, according to the AP, a Missouri court hearing has been scheduled for Tuesday of next week on a challenge to the ballot summary and cost estimate for a transportation tax proposal. Cole County Circuit Judge John Beteem set the hearing to occur on the same day that absentee voting is to begin for the August ballot measure. The proposed constitutional amendment asks voters whether to impose a 3/4-cent sales tax for roads and other transportation projects. A lawsuit by the Missouri Association for Social Welfare contends the summary wrongly leaves out information, including the fact that Missouri's use tax would also rise. It also challenges the legislator's projection that the tax would generate $534 million annually. The lawsuit asks a judge to write a new summary and order the auditor to prepare a new cost estimate. Yeah, I myself am not a fan of cutting pennies into fractions, at least not in a literal sense, even though they say it's legal. I prefer to press those pennies and put them in my coin collection. And finally on the docket, a former Burlington employee who sued the electric department and its general manager over allegations of ongoing harassment and wrongful termination received a $200,000 settlement from the city, the worker says. Patricia Crowley of Williston sued retiring general manager Barbara Grimes and her department in U.S. District Court last summer. The case alleged mistreatment when Crowley worked as an executive assistant for Grimes. Quote, "I really was just ready to get it done," Crowley said of the decision to settle. "I needed closure because it was really affecting me," unquote. The city's insurance company covered the settlement and most of the legal costs, City Attorney Eileen Blackwood said, though she added there might have been a city deductible. Blackwood noted the case could have become a risk at trial because the claim involved allegations, quote, "that certain things happened when only two people were present. Employment cases, quote, can be very emotional situations," she added. When asked whether the lawsuit had led to changes in city policies, Mayor Miro Weinberger on Wednesday evening noted the importance of having a healthy city work environment in general, but he said it would be inaccurate to draw any direct correlation. Weinberger declined to comment further because the case was a personnel matter resolved through litigation and settlement. The lawsuit alleged breach of contract, unlawful employment practices, discrimination, due process violations, and violation of the Common Benefits Clause in the Vermont Constitution. Grimes denied wrongdoing. Bob Filner, anyone?
Oh, no.
Right, those are your lawsuits across America for today. I'm Corey Evan. Case dismissed.
Sorry about that, folks. Thank you, Corey Evan. Corey Evan with your lawsuits across America tonight. All right, folks, we're going to take a short break. We already have Dan Butcher from Pundit Press. He's on hold on the line already, and we are awaiting the exceptional conservative himself, Ken McClinton, to call into the program for our news review. So we'll take a short break, and we'll be right back.
Conservative media done right. You're listening to the SHR Media Network.
You're listening to the Evan Miller Report on SHR Media and Pundit Press Radio.
Darcy here grew up riding horses.
I'm a cowgirl.
A tough cowgirl, battling a rare inoperable brain tumor. St. Jude Children's Research Hospital created a new treatment that's shrinking her tumor. We're taking bold steps to help save her life.
Better than your step.
Never wear sandals on a farm.
Give thanks for the healthy kids in your life and give to those who are not. Go to stjude.org or shop wherever you see the St. Jude logo.
Hi, this is Rooster from Outcry Radio. Catch me here on Blog Talk Radio every Saturday night at 11 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Or follow my blog at conservativeoutcry.net. Now, back to the Sackheads.
Let's get back to the Evan Miller Report on SHR Media and Pundit Press Radio.
All right, folks, that news sound means that it is time for the news review. And joining us right now on the line from Houston, Texas, is Dan Butcher of the Pundit Press, and he's with us tonight for our news review. Good evening, Dan.
Good evening, Jason.
And we're still awaiting the exceptional conservative himself, so what we are going to do, and as I state to folks, this is starting to happen a little bit more times than one, we are going to make an attempt to call up the exceptional conservative himself here on this program. So let's go ahead and add him to this call, if we can, ladies and gentlemen. Let's see that. All right. Ring-a-dingy 1. Ring-a-dingy 2, ring-a-dingy 1, ring-a-dingy 2, ring-a-dingy 1, ring-a-dingy 5, ring-a-dingy 6, ring-a-dingy 7. One thing, Dan, about Ken McClinton is sometimes he forgets his watch in leaving the house on Fridays.
I'm just as bad as Ken is.
I apologize that I could not take your phone call at this time.
Well,
however, feel free
all I got to say to Ken
is,
you know the number you got to call into. Give us a call here.
Telephone number again was 202-550-3174.
We'll leave a message for him anyway.
And I'm Ken McClinton. Thank you so much. God bless.
Ken, Jason Miller from the Evan Miller Report, calling live on the air with your friend Dan Butcher. Supposed to call into the program at 8 Eastern. Give us a call here, 1-800-545-5708, 1-800-545-5708. Hope to talk with you for the news review, buddy. Thanks. All right, well, we'll see what happens. Why do I feel like a telemarketer at just this particular second?
Well, Ken is probably busy expanding the economy with all of his new ventures in Washington, D.C. that he's currently undertaking.
Well, in the meantime, I have a little segment to air. Of course, Corey Evan covered tonight the major issue with Paul Ryan arguing with the IRS chief commissioner today. John Kazayan today. So, meantime, when we're trying to wait for Ken, we're going to go ahead and play this full spat between Paul Ryan and the commissioner.
This is unbelievable. The apology that ought to be given is to the American taxpayer, not to a government agency that is abusing its power. I am sitting here listening to this testimony. I don't believe it. That's your problem. Nobody believes you.
Come on now.
The Internal Revenue Service comes to Congress a couple years ago and misleads us and says no targeting is occurring. Then it said it was a few rogue agents in Cincinnati. Then it said it was also on progressives. All of those things have been proven untrue. This committee sent a criminal referral of possible criminal wrongdoing just a month ago to the Justice Department. We've heard nothing. You bury in a 27-page letter to the Senate asking for them to conclude the investigation that you've lost Lois Lerner's emails during the time in question because of a hard drive crash. Monday, our investigators asked your agency whether any other hard drives crashed, and we learned that 6 other hard drives of the people we're investigating were involved. You didn't tell us that.
We told you on Monday.
On Monday.
And what did you do with the information?
Because we asked you.
Right, and what did you do with that information?
You told us on Monday because we asked you whether any other hard drives crashed. This is unbelievable.
We answered
you told us on May that you were going to give us all of Lois Lerner's emails, and you learned in February that this crashed.
I did not learn in February it was a crash, and we told you on Monday.
I'm not asking you a question. I'm just making a statement.
My apologies.
You are the Internal Revenue Service. You can reach into the lives of hardworking taxpayers, and with a phone call, an email, or a letter, you can turn their lives upside down. You ask taxpayers to hang on to 7 years of their personal tax information in case they're ever audited, and you can't keep 6 months' worth of employee emails? And now that we are seeing this investigation, you don't have the emails. Hard drives crashed. You learned about this months ago. You just told us, and we had to ask you on Monday. This is not being forthcoming. This is being misleading again. This is a pattern of abuse, a pattern of behavior that is not giving us any confidence that this agency is being impartial. I don't believe you. This is incredible.
I have a long career. That's the first time anybody has said that you do not believe me. I
don't believe you.
That's fine. We can have a disagreement. I'm willing to stand on our record. I'm willing to remind you that it was not buried in 27 pages. Most of that 27 pages is exhibits. When asked about the custodians, we advised you
forthcoming,
which we knew for one day.
Being forthcoming is to say,
I'm sorry.
You know what, investigators, Congress who's investigating this
Will
about
you
this?
let him answer the question?
I didn't ask him a question.
Yes, you did.
Being forthcoming.
The gentleman
I control the time.
from Wisconsin.
I control the time.
I realize that disrupting a hearing sort of
No, come on.
No.
people, but the gentleman from Wisconsin.
I am not yielding time. I control the time.
He has a time.
Here's what being forthcoming is.
Regular order.
If we are investigating criminal wrongdoing, targeting of people based on their political beliefs, and the emails in question are lost because of a hard drive crash that is apparently unrecoverable, which a lot of IT professionals would question, and you don't tell us about it until we ask you about it, that is not being forthcoming.
And that's true.
I yield back the balance of my time.
That's not true.
The gentleman yields back. The gentleman has yielded back his time.
Thank you.
All right, and Dan Butcher is back with us, still waiting the exceptional conservative himself to call into the program here. But Dan, you, of course, the editor-in-chief over at Pundit Press, you're listening to this. You were subscribers to AP this morning, and it's like Congressman Paul Ryan, he said the key words right here. I don't believe you. I don't believe you. And it's unbelievable. And look who came to Commissioner John Kunstein's defense. The first one, Congressman Elijah Cummings. Not surprising, considering he was with Darrell Issa during another hearing, saying that this hearing was a witch hunt. And remember what that hearing was? It was the Benghazi hearing.
Exactly, and you also had the new White House press secretary today when he was commenting on this, saying that this is just a conspiracy by the Republicans. So, they're continuing to try to cover up, and they're continuing to try to stall, delay, and try to pass this off as just that the Republicans are a bunch of nuts looking for something that's not really there. But if you really take it, the words and the comments that Paul Ryan made today are very, very important, and I think we need to break it down a little bit because it really gets to a lot of this. And now I'm going to do this off the top of my head. I've talked about this several times today, so if I'm quoting wrong, please correct me because I'm doing this off the top of my head, Jason. Okay? At the beginning, he says, "I'm sitting here listening to the testimony." Says, "I don't believe you. That's a problem. Nobody believes you." That gets to the heart of the matter that the general public does not believe the IRS anymore. They've lost all credibility, as well as the Obama administration. Then he goes on to say that the IRS comes to us a couple of years ago. They misled us. They told us that no targeting was occurring, that it was just a few rogue agents in Cincinnati. Then they said it was also on progressives, and Ryan goes on to say that all of those things have been proving untrue. So now we're getting into there is we're getting into definite signs of a cover-up, that the IRS is constantly changing its story to try to fit the narrative, to try to cover this up. And Ryan also went on, he says, "You are the Internal Revenue Service. You reach into our lives of hardworking taxpayers with a phone call, email, letter. The IRS has, can turn people's lives upside down. The IRS asks taxpayers to keep up to 7 years of their personal tax information in case they're ever audited, but all of a sudden the IRS is unable to keep 6 months worth of Lois Lerner's emails. Once again, this is stinking. You can smell the rotten smell all the way down here in Texas that this is a cover-up. And, he continues to go on and says, and now that we are seeing this investigation, you don't have the emails, hard drives crash, you learned about this months ago, you just told us, and we have to ask you on Monday. This is being misleading again. This is a pattern of abuse, a pattern of behavior that's not giving us any confidence that this agency is being impartial. He also went on to say, here's what being forthcoming is. If you are investigating criminal wrongdoing, targeting of people based on their political beliefs and their emails in question are lost because of a hard drive crash that is apparently unrecoverable, which we have now known that, the IRS threw this thing in the trash, which a lot of IT professionals would question, and you don't tell us about it until we ask about it, and that's not being forthcoming. Paul Ryan just blew the lid completely off of this today and exposed this 100% that the IRS is in the middle of a massive cover-up. And of course, you and I talked about this last night on your show, that a lot of these missing emails were emails that Lois Lerner sent directly to the White House. This was direct communications with the White House. And you and I also talked about that the IRS was by law supposed to keep hard copies of all of these emails. So the question now is, we know what happened to the crashed computer. It was trashed, thrown away, recycled, what have you. But now the question is, where are the hard copies of all of these emails of Lois Lerner, in particular of interest, the ones between her and the White House that the IRS was supposed to maintain by law? So
I have a
Paul
theory
Ryan
on that.
definitely got down to a lot of stuff here today.
Yeah, I have a theory on that. I bet when Paul Ryan said the words hard copy, I bet the people over at the IRS were saying, oh, blank, and I can't say the other word on the air just in case this is being rebroadcast to our iHeartRadio affiliates on podcast, but they said, oh, blank, we got to start shredding all this stuff, or else we're going to be in some trouble.
Oh, I'll even go further than that. I think they were probably, once this story came out, it would not surprise me if they were not shredded, incinerated, and then spread out over the ocean somewhere. These emails are probably in the bottom of the ocean somewhere with Osama bin Laden, knowing this administration.
Absolutely. 31 scandals on, and we certainly have not solved any of them, or at least if we are trying to solve any of them, the Democrats like Congressman Elijah Cummings are working in the hardest way that they possibly can to get distracted off these cases. You just look at what he did with his little tantrum when it came to the Benghazi hearing.
And the White House itself, in trying to cover this up, and to give you what the White House said today. Of course, now we have White House. We now are dealing with White House Press Secretary Josh Earnest, who's a protege of Jay Carney. Oh, by the way, we have to remember Jay Carney today made the comment that he never lied to the press corps. So that's kind of our joke.
Well, at least we got that one on tape.
We do have it on tape, and I am going to post it here in a little bit. But we have Josh Earnest today implying, when he was questioned about it, that the IRS targeting of conservative groups was simply, like I said, a conspiracy theory. And this is what he said. there have been 13 months of multiple congressional investigations, including 14 congressional hearings, 30 interviews with IRS, 50 written congressional requests, 750,000 pages of documents, minus the 60,000 pages of Lois Lerner emails that we don't have, and all of that has done nothing to substantiate false Republican claims of a broader political conspiracy. So I don't know if you're floating another conspiracy or if this is a request from the Republicans who are floating a conspiracy or what exactly that suggestion is. But the fact of the matter is we've been cooperating extensively. No, you have not. And despite that cooperation, we've seen continued allegations of Republican conspiracy theories that just never pan out. And of course, he is also referring to, this administration is also referring to Benghazi, the Benghazi cover-up, as a conspiracy theory, Fast and Furious as a conspiracy theory. Anything that is now questioned as far as scandals in this administration is now a right-wing conspiracy theory, according to the White House.
Yes, and my goodness, it continues. Just another day at the White House, where they always look at us, and I speaking us as Republicans, but I'm no longer a Republican. As I've mentioned on this program, I am a declined estate now, due to the ever-ending corruption, or should I say, misguidance of the GOP these days. So, but it just shows to tell you they look at the Republican Party as a bunch of crazy people and think they need to be locked up in an asylum. Yes, they can't say it out loud, but I know it's what they're thinking, Dan.
Oh, definitely. And Jason, let me kind of touch on this, because this is in my mind right now. Going back to Josh Earnest, people are already saying that this guy is. Think about this. They are already saying that he is worse than Jay Carney. Here's some of the comments. Of course, he's already worse than Jay Carney. Mark Knoller had this to say: on the surge of illegal immigrants to the U.S., Earnest decries deliberate misinformation that they could remain in the U.S. Simply not true. It goes on and on and on. So you've got people already saying that that this guy is going to be. Let's face it, he's going to be more of a stooge for Obama than even Carney was.
Yeah, and the guy uses more uhs and should I mention in that little press briefing than Carney ever did. So he's just like the commander-in-chief with the and should I go on? No.
Exactly.
Sorry, folks. I think my co-host Corey Evan has rubbed up on me with some of his comedy. All right, well, let's see if we can get we'll call the exceptional comedian. I'm going to call him right now because, man, this has turned into a comedic effect of him not calling in on time, and see if we can get him on the line here on the Evan Miller Report for the news review. Let's see if we can try that again. Ring-a-dingy 2, ring-a-dingy 3. Ring-a-dingy 4, ring-a-dingy 5.
I apologize that I could not take your phone call this time. However,
I think they probably the NSA blacked out the exceptional conservative phone over there in D.C. Probably, Dan. So, which leads us to another great story. The U.S. House Representatives today passed measures today, putting more concrete steps to stop the NSA from spying on our telephone calls.
Well, that all sounds great. You would think on the top that Congress is acting on this and they're going to do something about this. But you have to remember that the NSA does a whole lot of covert intelligence as well. So you have to stop and consider, this is just, the NSA spying and on telephone records and stuff like that. That's just the tip of the iceberg. You have to really stop and think, what do they do behind the scenes? How much are they spying on the American people behind the scenes? And how much is our federal government in a whole, spying behind the scenes? We ran a story on Pundit Press the other day about, and I'm trying to, let me see if I've still got it up. It's, here it is right here. It's in Kansas. And this story was particular in some particular Kansas towns. Driving a car makes you a potential criminal. And basically what they're doing is they have these license plates readers, and you might be familiar with these, that, basically what the police do is they drive up and down the block and reading license plates numbers and storing that information, looking for potential criminals, cars that may have been used in crime, stuff like that. If you stop at a stoplight or they're stopped behind you, they're reading your license plate and storing that information. So there's another example of, your information being gathered without your knowledge. So, it goes on and on. And quite honestly, Jason, the government could be listening to our conversation in your radio show tonight as well without our knowledge. And so, it's just astronomical to think behind the scenes how much information is our own federal government really gathering on its own people.
Very interesting question. And even if the government is listening into this program tonight, take the message from me. We don't want to be spied on. We definitely don't want to be spied on. And even the ACLU has come on our side with that. So you don't have any backbone behind you. Well, they may have a little backbone. They have Barack Obama, who's sticking up for him, but won't speak publicly about it because he's too embarrassed to.
Oh yeah, and our government has a long history. Even back from the colonial days to present day, our government has constantly, let's be honest, they have spied on their own people and gathered on their own people. The J. Edgar Hoover's files are legendary, especially the files that he kept on Martin Luther King Jr. as well as John F. Kennedy, Robert F. Kennedy, etc. And the files he kept on Hollywood stars. But what makes it different today is, and what really piques people's interest is the way the current administration is circumventing Congress and circumventing the Constitution in order to get its agenda done. So we definitely have a different climate today, and that is what makes the spying of American citizens today, even more egregious, because they're gathering more and more information than they ever have, down to your medical records. And if you've signed up for Obamacare, now they have full access to your medical records. So it's what we're seeing today is the amount of information that the federal government is gathering on its own citizens prior to previous administrations.
Absolutely. So it's a very interesting story, and of course we'll be continuing to follow that story as it develops. All right, another story, and this has to do still with spying, as if I can get it off. Yes, Julian Assange says he fears for the safety of his family. Of course, we read this earlier in our headlines. And just to give you a little bit of broad-based information on this, Dan, he was speaking at the Ecuadorian embassy in London. Mr. Assad said unspecified individuals had made threats against his children and his mother. He complained that he was unable to see them in the past 4 years. So, what do you think about this? Does Assad really have a right to be saying all this stuff, or he really put himself in his own jeopardy?
You know what? He put himself in his own jeopardy. With what he did, he put himself out there. And I'm sure that he has been getting threats from day one. and I'm trying to remember if I've ever heard him speak out like this before about threats that he's received. But I'm actually thinking this may be the first time that he's actually spoken out about threats against his family and stuff like that. But in all honesty, it's his own fault. With what he did, he put himself out there, and he put his family in jeopardy. He put his family at risk. And that's some of the consequences. You have to remember that, all of your actions do have consequences, good or bad, and in this case, this would be a very bad consequence of his own actions.
Absolutely. And look at Edward Snowden. He knew what he was getting into when he put the information out about the NSA, and he knew it. He probably told his parents, hey, Mom, Dad, I'm putting this stuff out here, and it may put your life in danger. And they were probably against it, what he did, but he did it, and he did it to protect Americans. That's quite a different case, and Edward Snowden knows what he did, and he knows he's probably never going to be welcomed back in the United States ever again. Doesn't matter which administration you have.
Yeah. A lot of the information that Hassan leaked out actually put American troops in jeopardy and American lives in jeopardy. And we can, and as far as Edward Snowden goes, we can argue till we're blue in the face whether he's a hero, whether he's a criminal. Did he break laws? Yes, he did. Did he do it for the right reasons? We can debate that as well. But but there is one thing we cannot deny about Edward Snowden, and that is the fact that he did blow the lid off of the NSA spying. And if it wasn't for him, we would not be having our previous conversation about the NSA, and we would not have Congress taking action against the NSA. And so, a lot of people will call Snowden a traitor. A lot of people will call him a hero. A lot of people will call him both. So there's a lot of arguments on both sides, but you cannot argue that the fact that because of his actions that it did blow the lid off the NSA, because we have some other issues with whether he leaked secrets to the Russians and to the Chinese and stuff like that, which really bolsters the argument that he's a traitor. But definitely, there are two different situations when it comes to Hassan and Snowden.
Absolutely. And speaking of losing tempers in both houses of Congress, in a major blow to efforts to get Congress' troubled budget back on track, the Senate's top Democrat, who we know to be as Harry Reid, yanked a $180 billion spending measure from the Senate floor yesterday after Republicans protested a plan that would have denied them the chance to more easily win changes to the measure. As I mentioned, the aforementioned Majority Leader Harry Reid pulled the bill after Minority Leader Mitch McConnell thwarted a move to require a supermajority 60-vote threshold for adoption of amendments to the measure. Reid was also forced in canceling a committee consideration Thursday of a separate energy and water projects spending bill after McConnell appeared poised to win a vote aimed at assault on new government rules on carbon emissions from existing coal-fired plants. Well, we've usually on this program have complained a lot, Dan, about the Minority Leader Mitch McConnell not doing much for the American people. But wow, he sort of shocked me last night in doing this. Night, we weren't expecting this one. Maybe he's ready. He's thinking about that election in November.
Well, I'll guarantee you he's thinking about that election in November. Let's face it, Harry Reid has one job and one job only as the Senate Majority Leader right now, and that is to protect Barack Obama and to protect Barack Obama's agenda and to protect the legacy of Barack Obama. And so he's going to do anything that's going to affect the Democrats from being able to kind of keep the Republicans in check. Harry Reid is definitely going to fight that tooth and nail. And and you see that Harry Reid is, once again, his only job right now is to protect the Obama administration. And if that is not reason enough to get behind the GOP and for the GOP to wake up and get their act together so they can retake the Senate, I don't know what is, because as long as Harry Reid and is the Senate Majority Leader and the Democrats are in control of the Senate, we can have as large a majority in the House that the Republicans can have as large a majority in the House that they can possibly get, but they're not going to be able to do anything to stop President Obama because he's still got Harry Reid as an ally in the Senate. So that's what makes the midterm election so important, because if the Republicans have any hopes of whatsoever of keeping their party together and not splintering into several fractions, they've got to retake the Senate. And if they have any hopes of capturing the White House, that first stepping stone has to be to retake the Senate and get rid of Harry Reid so they can stop Barack Obama's agenda. And so it's nice to see, Mitch McConnell actually, stepping up to the plate a little bit. We would like to hope that he's listening to the constituents. We would like to hope that he saw what happened to Eric Cantor. We would like to hope that that the conservatives are lighting a fire under his rear end a little bit. But I'm gonna hold out judgment until we see a little bit more action instead of inaction from Mitch McConnell and the more established Republicans in the Senate.
Yes, absolutely. All right, let's move on to some international politics, and I know you're more on the national politics, but I'm sure you know plenty about the Iraq situation in which we get involved. Well, look at this. Hold on just a second, and I have to answer my phone here because I think we have Ken on the line. So, Dan, why don't you go ahead and tell people a little bit about your show, the Dan Butcher Show on Pundit Press Radio, why I take this call with the Exceptional Conservative. Hold on there, Ken. I'm coming to you in a second.
Well, this is Dan Butcher, and I am sitting in for the great Jason Miller on the Evans Miller Report. And I'm going to tell you a little bit about Pundit Press and Pundit Press Radio, like Jason was asking me to do. You can visit our website at Pundit Press at thepunditpress.com. We're one of the fastest growing conservative websites in the country today. And one of the more exciting aspects that you're going to find with Pundit Press is also Pundit Press Radio, where we have a great lineup of hosts, including a partnership with SHR Media, which we also broadcast the Evans Miller Report, as well as the Sack Hedge Radio Show, and of course the exceptional one himself, Ken McClinton, on the Exceptional Conservative Show. So we're very excited about our partnership with SHR Media. We're very excited about the continued growth of Pundit Press Radio and Pundit Press, and our good friend Ken McClinton, the other night he made a proclamation on the Exceptional Conservative Show, and it's something that we at Pundit Press, and I know it's something that Jason and Corey are going to live up to on the Evan Miller Report, and that would be that the conservative media is now the mainstream media. And, Ken has really been harping on that, and I have really been harping about it on the, I know Jason listened to me really harp on it about last night on his show about how we are now the mainstream media. We are the majority in the media, and it is our job to get out there and get to the bottom of all of these stories, all of these scandals in the Obama administration. We got to get to the bottom of the IRS scandal. We got to get to the bottom of Benghazi. We got to get to the bottom of Fast and Furious. But if we do not do our jobs and we do not continue to report and investigate on these stories, and get to the bottom of them and get to the answers, the Obama administration and the liberal Democrats will just sweep this stuff under the rug. So we've got to continue pressing so that we can get the answers. If anything, we definitely have to find the answers and get down to the bottom of Benghazi, because we have the families of 4 innocent Americans that deserve to know what happened and why the Obama administration is covering up this tragic terror attack. And so,
Great job,
Jason, are you
Dan, on
back with us?
covering. Yes, we're back, and the exceptional conservative, I gotta say, he's in the house.
Welcome. Thank you, Dan, Jason. Thank you all so much for allowing me to come on your air, on your radio program. Listen, I apologize to you and your audience tonight. I am celebrating my wife's 16th birthday for probably before your son. And I had to step out of the birthday party, and I do apologize. So,
well, we certainly forgive you for that one, Ken, because we don't want to anger the wife, or else you'd be sleeping on the couch for the next month.
The couch would be a lucky spot.
I hope you got a comfortable doghouse in case that happens.
There you go. That's more like it.
All right. Well, right before you called me on my other line, Ken. We were talking about the situation going on in Iraq right now. Barack Obama is sending 100 to 300 quote military advisors, and he is still still thinking about doing airstrikes. It is supposedly on the table. So, and then apparently today we had this story out of the UK today of new videos of British people speaking on the Syrian border and promoting the terrorist organization ISIS today.
You know, it's really sad that once again this administration is being led by someone who has noble intentions but doesn't understand tactics, strategy, and history. We should not enter into the Mohammedan wars. This is a sectarian civil war, just like Syria is a sectarian civil war. In fact, there's 4 sectarian civil wars going on right now, along with a revolution against the one who is in power there. We need to clearly, and I disagree wholeheartedly with Senator John McCain, Senator Lindsey Graham, the soft Lindsey. We need to do all that we can to keep our noses out of the Middle East at this juncture. This is a Sunni versus Shia fight. The Kurds are stabilized. They already have ported out their positions in the northern portion of Iraq, and everyone's comfortable with them being there. In terms of Shia-led Iran, Shia-led Saudi Arabia, at least at the world group, the world leaders of that particular country, and the Shia of Iraq, they are right now in a precarious situation where they have to take on the majority of the followers of the Mohammedan cult. And so I am clearly opposed, stand in opposition. I'm not someone who doesn't believe that we have a responsibility, but certainly we do not have a dog in this particular fight. Sending 300 men, possibly to their peril, which he seems to have no problem doing, whether it's Benghazi or Extortion 17. Sending 300 men, possibly to their peril, to be counseled, can only lead to a more grave condition for American forces to enter into. We need to step back and allow them to fight it out. And once we have the weaker of the two opponents, then we can enter into with diplomatic arms.
Absolutely. My opinion of this entire situation, don't even get involved at all. And according to what I've heard, the head Ilala over in Iraq today has stated that he wants the current Prime Minister Maliki out of office. So that further shows the disagreement between how the Iraqi government is handling the situation, and sure shows more why we should not be getting involved. Because if the government, if Prime Minister Maliki's government falls there, Dan, we're going to run into another situation like we did with Egypt. And if we're giving military aid over to Iraq and they happen to have a supposed, quote, military coup like they did in Egypt, we are in some deep trouble. Look out, President Obama barely saved himself on that one in withdrawing military aid after the military coup with Mohamed Morsi when he was prime minister in that country of Egypt.
And, Ken, I made the comment last night on Jason's show that Iraq is so far gone at this point that for the U.S. to have any, if we were to have any effect on this situation at all, it would take another full-blown military action, not with hundreds of troops, but with hundreds of thousands of troops to get this. And that is something we definitely do not need to get involved in, and something that's something that we don't have a dog in the fight. But we also have to be wary of the fact that not only is this particular organization looking at taking over Iraq, they're also looking at potentially taking over Syria. So we definitely do have to have some plans in place to be able to deal with these guys, to keep them in check, to keep them within the borders of Iraq or the borders of Syria, to keep it from spreading any further into the Middle East. Definitely, because we have a situation where if Israel starts to become threatened, then we are going to have to act and protect Israel in their best interest. And if this starts spilling out any closer, I don't know how long we can restrain Israel. I don't know how long we can restrain the Turkish government and the Kurds from reacting to some of this too. So we've got a situation where the Middle East is going, let's be honest, it's looking like a scene from the Left Behind series of books. The Middle East is really going up in flames at this point, and our president has no earthly idea of how to deal with this, nor does he want to have an idea of what to do with this. He just, once again, like Ken was saying, we need to let these guys fight it out. We need to let them fight and kill each other, but we need to have a plan in place to keep them in check. If they come out of bounds, like in hockey, if they come out of bounds, we're going to kick them back into play. But our president doesn't even want to deal with that.
Go ahead, Ken.
Exactly. One of the things I do want to say here is that this administration recognized Hamas. This administration recognized Hezbollah. This administration recognized the Muslim Brotherhood. This administration has no problem recognizing terrorists and terrorist states. This organization, this administration is ready to do, forgive me, that's the party there. This administration is willing to compromise what George Washington said about allegiances and align themselves with the Shia-led government of the terrorist state of Iran. So this administration doesn't have a problem with terrorists. They have a great propensity to release them at the risk of killing more American soldiers. They have no problem communicating with the terrorist organizations to help them get nuclear weapons. They have no problems with sending billions of dollars over to the Muslim Brotherhood and even trying to fight against non-terrorist African nations that seek to have peace and an accord of strength versus the Mohammedan terrorists. So, quite frankly, this administration is more of a puppet leader for the terrorists than the last administration was a puppet leader for the liberators. And I just want to say this real quick in terms of our fight here. While this is going on, and we are paying attention to Maliki, who is falling, and the Ayatollah who will take over, while we are watching whether ISIS, with only probably 1,000 troops, I haven't seen anything or read about anything like this since Alexander the Great or Attila the Hun. It's just 1,000 people have taken over most of Iraq, so that pretty much tells you that some of this is sectarian and they are in agreement with it. While we're focusing on that, 120,000 children are on their way to cross the borders of California, New Mexico,
Oh, perfect
Arizona,
segue. I like this guy. Oh, wow. You hit the nail on the head. You hit the nail on the head there, Ken.
We need to rewatch it.
Well, we got an update on that, and I don't know if you, if Dan or Ken, if you've heard it, but we are now going to be sending $9.3 million over to the countries of Honduras, El Salvador, Guatemala, where all these supposed children who came over the border into your home state there of Texas, Dan, we're going to be sending them money and to help the citizens repatriated from the U.S. So we are helping these children's families and the people in Mexico for penalizing them because they came over the border illegally. How nice is that? The Obama administration finally decided to act because Governor Rick Perry decided to take care of the situation. And he hasn't stopped Rick Perry, but look, here's the money. Here's the money. Go back home. I'll give you money. We got free money over here.
Yeah, let me give you the comment on this. When you have Hillary Clinton saying that we need to deport and send all of these kids and all of these illegal aliens back to their home countries in this current wave, let's face it, it is an invasion, folks. This is an invasion. Our southern border is being invaded. When you have Hillary Clinton saying, we've got to send them back, that tells you how bad this situation is. And thankfully, Rick Perry has the cojones enough to do something, or at least attempt to do something about this, that the Obama administration, that the Rhino Republicans and the liberal Democrats will not do, and that is seal the freaking border. And now here in Texas, most of what our resources with our Department of Public Safety and what a lot of our resources are going to be doing, they are going to be going down to try to relieve some of the Border Patrol, help the Border Patrol in some of their efforts in dealing with this massive invasion that we're seeing on our southern border. But as a direct result of this invasion of the illegal aliens and the children being dumped on us at our doorsteps here, is the fact that the drug cartels are going completely unchecked on our southern border right now. They are running rapid back and forth because the Border Patrol has no resources whatsoever to be able to deal with them. So we've got drugs coming across, we've got weapons coming across, you name it, it's coming across. And so now the state of Texas is being forced, and quite honestly, we should have done this a few years ago. The state of Texas is going to be spending the tune of $1.5 million per week in additional resources along the border to be able to tie in an attempt. I mean, are they going to be successful? In some aspects, they will. Are they going to be able to stop it all? No, because even here in the state of Texas, we don't have all the resources we need, but at least we're going to attempt to do something, to directly go head-to-head with these drug cartels, which the federal government will not do. So we're going to go head-to-head with these guys, and quite honestly, our law enforcement folks are going to be told to shoot to kill with these guys, because they're going to get shot at, they're going to return fire, and they're not going to mess around with them. And then hopefully they'll also be able to take some of the pressure off of the Border Patrol, who don't have the resources and have had their hands tied behind their back by the Obama administration in dealing with this massive invasion on the border as well.
Absolutely, and on top of it, I hate to say it, the liberal media, because we are the mainstream media, as Dan brilliantly put it when I was trying to get you on the phone there, Ken. We had to hear this report from an international source. This hasn't even hit U.S. media yet. This came from the BBC of all places. So look at how the Obama administration is trying to cover this up and trying to sneak this in. And thankfully, we got our friends over in Britain who are looking at this, and they have their own border issues. They've been dealing with it. They have Islamic terrorists and Islamic Mohammedists coming over across their border every day. So they certainly didn't want to be caught in the middle of this, and thanks to the BBC for reporting this. A couple more details I want to state on this story because right here, the funding includes, this doesn't even this full amount is $93 million in new programs to reduce violence in the region. And funding includes $40 million to reduce gang membership in Guatemala, $25 million, and you're going to love this, Ken, this is going to tick you off, to build youth outreach centers. And $18.5 billion to build youth outreach centers in Honduras and El Salvador. You mentioned this on your program all weekend until I read this. It's like, oh my, Ken's going to have a seizure.
We're going to take
and that's not all. $1.4 million to cope with the situation in Congress that the White House is now asking for. Wow! You have the outreach centers in D.C. Now we're building outreach centers in the likes of Guatemala and El Salvador. Oh, goody!
I just want to say here that there are no clean hands on this particular matter. I will report to you that in Prince George's County, Maryland, last night in a church, I don't have all the details with me because I definitely would have provided them over the air, but the county executive, Ross Baker, and remember, this is an election year in PG County, Maryland, had received word from the White House that they would receive special funding if they could house some of these illegal aliens who are crossing the border without our permission. If they could airlift them to Prince George's County and keep them in a housing center there until such time as they could be either repatriated or lost in America. Rashawn Baker received over 10,000, well, it wasn't 10,000, I think it was 5,000 people showed up in that small, surrounded the small church, virtually telling him that if he moves forward on this thing, he can look for a new job in the new year. African Americans are definitely opposed to the idea of illegal aliens coming to the country, and I spoke with Gabriela Mercedo. You had her on your show earlier this week, and as well, Latinos are definitely against this particular thing. This administration is trying to cover its tracks behind Fast and Furious. And part of the problem is that many of those individuals who are crossing the border is related to somebody who was killed with one of the guns that we lost in Mexico and gave to the drug cartel. So you have angry, bitter individuals who are crossing that border. You have MG, 13 and other gangsters and drug cartels crossing that border, like Dan said. And still coming to the rescue and sending the National Guard to protect the border. He comes up with a $9 million plan. This is a $9 million plan. We will build it, and they shall come.
$93 million.
This is an embarrassment. There's also one thing I want to say about this. In this particular case, I want to thank the Texas militia and all the other militias in America who represent those who heartily believe in the full anointing of the Second Amendment, who are on their way now, so from Nevada, from Oregon, from Texas, and from other points around the country, who are on their way to that border right now to align themselves with Governor Perry and the rest of his troops of police officers down there. Now, that is going to be rejected by this administration, and you might see one of the most hellacious episodes. This would have happened at the Bundy Ranch, where the American troops are called to turn on their own people. I'm telling you all to watch this what's going on right now at the border of Texas, because it implicates this administration in terms of what it really meant when they said fundamentally transforming America, turning American against Americans, our government against those citizens.
Absolutely right on that one there, Ken. And excuse for me getting a little bit excited. I'm getting comments from the other room that I was a little overly excited when we're spending $93 million and we're building little youth resource centers that you've experienced personally, Ken, that they have failed. What the hell is this? Excuse the word, and I'm going to get the comments for using the word hell, but what the hell is this administration thinking?
And Jason, let me add a little bit more to this story. As you know, President Obama called his counterpart in Mexico and had a strongly worded conversation with him about the surge of illegal immigrants and children on our southern border. During that conversation, not one time, not one word was said about a Marine that is currently being held in a Mexican jail because he accidentally wandered across the border, that is suffering from post-traumatic stress disorder, that his mother has not heard a single thing from our federal government about anything they're going to do with him, for him. Not one word was said in this conversation about this guy, but yet this administration was more than willing to trade 5 of the most dangerous Taliban leaders, 5 of the most dangerous Islamic jihadist terrorists that we had at Gitmo for a deserter. But yet he was not able to say one word about an American soldier that went back across the border by accident, suffering from post-traumatic stress disorder, probably didn't even realize he'd gone across the border by accident. Not one word to try to do something to get this guy out of jail.
Well, he's probably not a deserter, that's why.
That's, of course, the Obama administration's classic thing, ladies and gentlemen. He loves to support deserters. He loves to support people who break the rules, who don't follow the rules. But I should give Obama a certain exception. If the person gets shot at or has some facial deformities or anything, and I'm not picking on anyone in the military, I'm just saying, if someone has to be shot or be near to death or jump on a grenade or something, for President Obama to actually look at them and give them any attention. If they don't do any of that and they just do it, go ahead.
Actually, if a soldier actually jumped on a grenade in this Commander-in-Chief's army, he would definitely take away their retirement pension and chastise them for being so ungodly. And I pay every man for himself in the Obama army.
All right. I don't know if any of you caught the late night talk shows, but it looks like you mentioned this earlier. Today was Jay Carney's last day as White House press secretary, and he made the rounds on one of the late night talk shows last night. He was on with Stephen Colbert, laughing it up last night. So, Ken, you're over there in D.C. What's your opinion of the Mr. new press secretary?
Okay, if John Boehner was worth his salt as a human being, or Issa was worth his salt as a human being, the minute he left the White House at 5:01 p.m. today, he should have been served a subpoena to come before the congressional subcommittee regarding all 37 of the outstanding scandals outside of the top 5. He should have been called to explain to the select committee exactly where President Obama was for 8 hours while our ambassador and 3 great patriots were killed in Benghazi. He should have been there to explain exactly how does Lois Lerner, lose 2 years with an email, and there's no government server available? Yeah, I would see. He should have been greeted by the FBI and by the Congress with subpoenas as he was getting into his car to make certain that he knew on Monday morning you have some people to report to and talk to, because we want to know what's on your mind and what was on Obama's mind when all of these things were going down.
Absolutely right. And by the way, folks, it is approaching the top of the hour. I'm getting permissions from SHR if we can go for another hour, if you two are willing to go at it, because we got some more. I got some more stories if you're willing to go for another one.
Well, Jason, I cannot go past 8 o'clock because I have to give a speech at about 8:05.
Okay, well, I'll let you go, but we'll keep the exceptional conservative around if he's more than willing to stick around.
I could probably do it for another 10 minutes, but I got to get back to this birthday party all my wife will divorce me.
All right, 10 minutes sounds good. All right, so Dan Butcher from the Pundit Press, editor-in-chief over there, thank you very much for sticking with us for the hour. And by the way, ladies and gentlemen, Ken McClin, the exceptional conservative, is going to stick with us for another 10 minutes because I have a couple stories I want to put off you, and one of them has to do with Hillary Clinton. So, Dan, you can hang up at any time, by the way. Yeah, no need for you to stay.
Dan, great job from the press. I'm impressed.
All right. So, Ken, you're still with me, and Dan, thank you very much for being with us. I read this story earlier tonight. Apparently, Hillary Clinton's successful 1975 legal defense of an accused rapist has surfaced again, with the victim angered over a tape of Clinton chuckling over her courtroom tactics. She said, quote, "Hillary Clinton took me through hell," in an emotional interview. She continued to say, "I realize the truth now, the heart of what you have done to me. And you're supposed to be for women? You call that being blank for women? What you have done to me?" And I heard you on the tape laughing. The name of the woman, who is now 52, was withheld with privacy reasons. She decided to speak out after hearing never before heard audio tapes released by the Washington Free Beacon earlier this week of Hillary Clinton talking about the trial. In the recordings dubbed the Hillary tapes, Clinton is heard laughing as she describes how she succeeded at getting her court-appointed client a lighter sentence despite suggesting she knew he was guilty. She said, quote, and I got this on tape now, ladies and gentlemen, "He took a lie detector test. I had him take a polygraph, which he passed, which forever destroyed my faith in polygraphs." End of quote. So, do we really want this woman running for the President of the United States? She says she sticks up for women, and look at what she did to an accused rapist. Let him get away.
Well, let me just say this in this regard. We have a wonderful judicial system in our country where every man is innocent until proven guilty. And it's up to 12 jurors to sit there and evaluate the evidence presented before them and thus make a determination. So Hillary is as guilty on that particular subject as the 12 that sat there and looked at the evidence and made the judgment accordingly, which by all means, I'm not trying to, I know the world is probably on its ears right now that the exceptional conservative is somehow defending Hillary Clinton. And I'm not trying to defend Hillary Clinton. I'm defending the justice that we have in this country, which our founding fathers derived biblically. So we do have a right before counsel or judge to present ourselves. And we do have someone by order of the work that they perform to represent the worst of criminals and give them the best of defenses. It's our job as individuals to see through the cracks, to see who's innocent and who's guilty. And not even innocent or guilty as much as to prove without a shadow of a doubt whether someone is guilty. So on this particular note, Hillary Clinton has so many other issues about this, but it goes to show in terms of her character that she is as political as she condemns others to be. Everything about her is a political thing. It's what I wear, is that going to get me 5 points in the poll or 10 points in the poll? If I'm for the war in Iraq, is it going to give me 5 points or is it going to give me 10? And if I'm against it now, is it 5 points or 10? If I'm for it now, is it 5 points? For her, everything is political. And personally, I don't know how you can live a life, because that's not biblical, to live a life by being told by the public. That's not biblical. It shows that she has few principles stand upon and many errors to call upon. And finality on this particular statement, Hillary Clinton, like her husband, are seeking to do what Stalin did after Lenin came in. Obama is Lenin, and Hillary Clinton is Stalin. She wants to take over a transformed America with an ill-conceived or forgive me for something, I'm just, without a dare consent towards the Constitution and all that has been torn up and shredded. She wants to be the first Empress of America. And we need to do everything that we can to pull these people out through impeachment, through court, and also through judicial activism on our part, to make certain that these individuals pay the price before they win election to office. Because once they're in, you will never see the republic as it was intended to be.
Absolutely. All right, moving on, we got some social stories to cover tonight. Of course, the big story being Justine Petler being returned to her parents this past Wednesday. Of course, this is a 16-month battle that we've been following for the past at least 3 to 5 months here on the Evan Miller Report. Of course, Justine being held for the past 16 months by the Massachusetts DCF, and she's been finally allowed to go home. But there's still millions of children in all 50 states there, Ken, who are being taken away from their parents and having their parental rights suspended by government bureaucracies like Boston Children's Hospital.
You know, it's really unfortunate that this young woman suffered the fate of a human being before an activist judge. What we have here is a real-life case of what happens when it's no longer just an abortion issue, it's no longer just a same-sex marriage issue, but when it comes down to life itself and who has the ultimate control over a child. Is it the parent or the state? And what we have figured out with the judicial courts of today, with their activism, is that the control of the child belongs to the state. That's how you can get an MSNBC host to say that our children belong to the community. No, our children belong to their parents. And then whatever the parent decides is in the best interest of that particular child, it should be weighed more heavily in a court case than any determination by some doobie psychiatrist who comes in and decides that the best thing that can ever be done is to separate a child from their parent. In addition to that, we need to take a hard look at an administration that supports children coming across the border without their parents, 5, 6, 7, 8 years old, some in wheelchairs, some barely making it because of the desert conditions. 17-year-old MG gangsters coming across the border without their parents. See, when you have a state mentality that it's okay for children to break the law and the state will take care of it, we're already in the wrong situation. We need to change our judiciary, and we need to change our executive offices and our institutions of legislature to make certain that parents have the ultimate consent and control over their children and that they do not belong to the state.
All right. One more. I think I have two more stories. One that's probably going to tick you off because I know you do your own religious program on Friday mornings on BTR, which we are no longer with due to certain issues. But the top legislative body of the Presbyterian Church has voted by large margins to recognize same-sex marriage as Christian in the church constitution, adding language that marriage can be the union of two people, not just a man and a woman. So I won't go any farther than that because man, that world really ticks me off for one. But you do your own religious service on Fridays. What's your response to this?
Well, if you can vote away a mental illness, which is homosexuality, you certainly can vote away God. We have a Nietzsche idealism about how society works. If we believe that it doesn't exist, we vote it away. If we believe that it's an inconvenience to our political gains, we vote it away. I'm going to say this in regards to the faith, and this in regards to religion. Faith is sustained by the Word of God. It is irrefutable. It is immutable. It is without incandescence. This is a true and honored acceptance of who God is by His inspired Word. We may not like everything that's said in it, but everything that is in it is descriptive of who He is. To take one jot or one tittle away and proclaim it godly is an abomination. Now, the unfortunate thing here is that there are little children who are being raised under the auspices and guide of religious leaders who believe that if they don't like something God said, they can either erase God or erase His Word. That means that you have created children who are no longer submitted or obedient to the Word of God. And so doing it, they don't have to obey His authority. Why should they ever have to obey your authority? And so you have created the perfect storm amongst the religious cults, whether it's a Mohammedan or whether it's the Methodists. You have created a perfect storm. You have said to the world, God does not exist for me. I am my own God. And we can go back to Judges and see extensively that when men do things what they think to be right in their own eyes, it can only lead to death and destruction. And we're setting up a nation that will soon be doomed by the irreverent presence of those who can vote away anything when they don't like it.
Absolutely. All right, one more story. I'm gonna. It's not a humorous note, but it's sort of funny to me. In a recent, in a new article that's supposed to be in Parade magazine this Sunday, President Obama and First Lady Michelle Obama, who said they both worked minimum wage jobs, say they want their teenage daughters, Malaya and Sasha, 16 and 13 respectively, to work minimum wage jobs. They said, quote, "We are looking for opportunities for them to feel as if they're going to work and getting a paycheck is not always fun, not always stimulating, not always fair. But that's what most folks go through every single day." That's a little funny considering the president wants to raise the minimum wage. Isn't it a little hypocritical there, Ken?
So it's a little hypocritical that he has taken away 2 jobs that some unemployed African-American teenager needs in a very impoverished community. You see, for him, it's a game. He rules the world. He rules America. He doesn't need Congress. He doesn't need the Supreme Court. He's got a pen and a phone. Those children don't need a job. They could travel to Mexico with a huge groups of CIA and other officials, Secret Service officials following them. They have wealth beyond told. What he should have done, and this would be my encouragement to all parents in urban America, number 1, focus on teaching your kids the skill sets necessary where they can create jobs rather than being dependent on getting a job. Number two, stop talking about raising the minimum wage and the creation of your job, create the income necessary where minimum wage is a last. And then finally, start supporting African American or community-oriented federal credit unions. Returning the money sevenfold in your community will do a whole lot more than the President of the United States signing a pen and giving your kid a summer job. It's an embarrassment, in my opinion, but go ahead, earn that minimum wage so you can write a book someday saying, my daddy forced me to work. Oh, well,
Malaya may not be able to write that in her book because her first job is actually working on a CBS television program set here in Los Angeles, working as a production assistant.
Well, somebody's got to take Jake Hardy's spot. Keep it in the family.
There you go. She'll probably be Hillary by the time Hillary Clinton gets in 2016. She'll probably be calling Malaya on the phone, and say, "Hey, Malaya, I got an opening in the press office. You want it?"
There you go. My director of communications, Jason. I look forward to you coming on the air with us at 10 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on the Exceptional Conservative Show, which you can hear on SHR Media with my crackhead cronies, and as well the Evans Miller report, and you can also hear us on Pundit Press. And I encourage everyone, make certain that in your browser you have already bookmarked SHR Media and Pundit Press, and as well the Exceptional Conservative Show, Evans Miller report, and Sackhead Radio. God bless you all.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much for listening to me tonight.
God bless you, Ken. Thanks so much. Have a great weekend. Talk to you on Monday.
You too.
All right. Bye-bye. All right. That's Ken McClellan, the exceptional conservative himself. All right, folks. We're going to take a short break. When we come back, Corey Evan will have his entertainment report, and then we will wrap up the program because we went a little bit over, but according to what I heard from our folks, we are doing fine because the Underground Professor does not start until the top of the hour at 10 Eastern, 7 Pacific, so we have a little time before that. So let's go ahead, take a short break, and recharge here briefly, and then when we come back, Corey Evan will have his entertainment report.
Conservative media done right. You're listening to the SHR Media Network.
At St. Jude Children's Research Hospital, our discoveries have helped drive the childhood cancer survival rate from 20% to 80%. And we share our research all across America.
I'm 80% sure I'll spoil my kids. I'm 80% sure I'll break boys' hearts. I'm 80% sure we're chick magnets.
80%? I'll take those odds.
Give thanks for the healthy kids in your life and give to those who are not. Go to stjude.org or shop wherever you see the St. Jude logo.
In a world controlled by corrupt politicians,
You got a business. You didn't build that.
a team of ordinary men emerge from the ashes to give voice to the voiceless and hope to the hopeless. Sackhead Sean.
Dude, I'm not saying Catholic, stupid bro.
Sackhead Clint.
All good friends of ours usually show up drunk.
Also starring Sacco as the producer.
I'm a little bit drunk, 'cause I'm drinking.
They are the Sackheads Radio Show. Every Wednesday at 8 p.m. Pacific on shrmedia.com.
Some of America's bravest warriors are returning home wounded. Here's one of them.
My name is Norberto Lara. I served for 11 years in the United States Army. While I was on a combat patrol in Baqaba, Iraq, a rocket-propelled grenade took my arm off at the shoulder. When I came home, I felt alone. My family was around me, but I couldn't talk to them about what I'd seen and what I'd done. I remember just thinking, man, the way I am right now, I don't want to live. I was discharged from the Army, and I've been working with the Wounded Warrior Project since 2007. You don't have to be severely wounded to be with the Wounded Warrior Project. We do have a lot of guys that have post-traumatic stress disorder. Being able to share your story, I guess it kind of helps you wrap your mind around what did happen over there. Just because you've left the military doesn't mean your life is over. Because when these guys are coming home, I'm kind of leading and training them. Instead of for combat, I'm leading and training them to heal. If I come away with anything from Wounded Warrior Project, it's them giving my life back. My name is Norby, and yes, I do suffer from post-traumatic stress disorder, but I'm okay.
Don't suffer in silence. Contact woundedwarriorproject.org.
Let's get back to the Evan Miller Report on SHR Media and Pundit Press Radio.
And welcome back to the Evan Miller Report. Special thanks again to Dan Butcher, the editor-in-chief over at Pundit Press, from our Houston newsroom for joining in tonight's news review. Also, Ken McClinton, the exceptional conservative, here nightly on the SHR Media Network, Monday through Thursday at 9 Eastern, 6 Pacific time. Also encourage you to check out his Friday morning Bible study at 7 Eastern, 4 a.m. Pacific. And I know it's a little early for those of you out here on the West Coast, but some people are up at 4 a.m. in the morning, such as myself, working my other job. So encourage you to check that out on a weekly basis. Special thanks to the exceptional conservative. Of course, he'll be back with a full program here in this time slot on Monday evening, starting 9 Eastern, 6 Pacific. All right, folks, it's time to send it over to Corey Evan, and he has tonight's entertainment wrap. Corey.
Thank you very much, Jay. And a 60s icon has slipped into the sands of time in my entertainment news. Jerry Goffin, who collaborated with Carole King to write some of the biggest hits of the 1960s, songs that endured through generations to become classics, including Will You Love Me Tomorrow, Up on the Roof, One Fine Day, and The Locomotion, died on Thursday at his home in L.A. He was 75. His death was announced by his wife, Michelle. No cause was given, according to the New York Times. Rest in peace, Mr. Goffin. And Tracy Morgan's not dead yet, thankfully. It looks like Tracy Morgan's finally on the road to recovery and is entering rehab facilities for injuries sustained earlier this month. This comes on the heels of learning that the comedian, who was left in critical condition after a late-night car crash on the New Jersey Turnpike, was upgraded to fair condition a few days ago. Morgan's limo bus was being driven by Kevin Roper when it crashed into a truck. Roper pleaded not guilty to a charge of vehicular homicide and assault by auto after the crash killed comedian Jim McNair and left Morgan and 3 others in critical condition. But now it appears the actor is ready to begin rehabbing his injuries, according to The Hollywood Reporter. Quote, Tracy has been transferred to an undisclosed rehab center where he's expected to remain for the next few weeks, said his publicist Louis Kay. While he is continuing to show signs of improvement, he still has a long way to go. He and Meghan wanted to publicly express their deepest gratitude to everyone at Robert Wood Johnson University Hospital for the unbelievable care and attention they provided him, unquote. There has been no update on the other 3 people hurt in the crash, though Jeffrey Millia was also upgraded to fair condition. As for you, Mr. Roper, you're in trouble now. And U.S. television station Lifetime is planning a movie billed as the behind-the-scenes look at the young stars of the 90s comedy Saved by the Bell, according to The Hollywood Reporter. Titled The Unauthorized Saved by the Bell Story, the film will examine the cast members' efforts to maintain the squeaky clean image of their on-screen characters under the fierce spotlight of public scrutiny. It has been cast by the show's original casting director Robert Lippin. Saved by the Bell was a TV sitcom that ran from 1989 to 1993 on NBC in the US and Channel 4 in the UK, also spawning 2 follow-up shows and 3 television movies between 1993 and 2000. It was originally set in the fictional Bayside High School in LA before moving to the equally non-existent California University for the single-season Saved by the Bell The College Years. Spin-off Saved by the Bell, The New Class returned the cameras to Bayside. The TV movie, which will air on September 1st in the US, features Dylan Everett as Mark Paul Gosselaar, Sam Kinseth as Dustin Diamond, Julian Works as Mario Lopez, Alyssa Lynch as Tiffany Amber Thiessen, Tierra Scothier as Elizabeth Berkley, and Taylor Russell as Lark Voorhees. It's Lifetime's latest biographical venture, following controversial TV movies about the late Whitney Houston and Aaliyah. Wait a minute, I thought it was Disney that was making the one about Aaliyah.
Never mind. If Disney wants to make one, they can make one as well.
And opening up at the box office this weekend, apparently 2 cruds according to Rotten Tomatoes. Think Like a Man 2 with Adam Brody and Michael Ealy has 23%, while Jersey Boys with John Lloyd Young and Eric Bergen has 58%. At the box office, though, you do have other options. 22 Jump Street, which has 85%, brought in $57.1 million this week. How to Train Your Dragon with 92%, brought in $49.5 million. And rounding out the top 3 with 18.5 million more this week, Maleficent, even though it's only got 50%, so the critics are having a food fight over that one. That's your entertainment report for today. I hope to entertain you again tomorrow. Till then,
Conservative media done right. You're listening to the SHR Media Network.
Thank you very much, Corey. Corey Evan with your entertainment report tonight. All right, folks, finally tonight we have a flight attendant, Southwest flight attendant, I should say, who offers funny spin on pre-flight announcements. Here's one of the examples. Ladies and gentlemen, do us a favor today, Robert Baker said on a Southwest flight. Sit back, relax, enjoy our hospitality, or you can sit up and be tense. The choice is yours. Baker then broke into a quick number that he sang to the popular tune of the PBS program Barney, I Love You, in, quote, "We love you, you love us, we're much faster than the bus. We hope you enjoy our hospitality, marry one of us, and you'll fly for free." The entire cabin erupted in laughter, of course. The passengers were en route to Chicago back in 2005 from San Francisco and treated to a not-so-normal rundown of pre-flight instructions from the attendant, who could possibly double as a comedian. David London was on the flight, filmed the routine, and posted it on YouTube, which we will be posting this story on our Evan Miller Report Facebook page for you to look at after this broadcast is over. I told him it was the most fun flight I ever took, and thank you for going above and beyond to make everyone feel comfortable and entertained, London wrote in the post's description. He threw a cocktail party halfway through the flight as well. Southwest flight attendants making the skies a little bit more friendly is nothing out of the ordinary. The airline's unorthodox approach to in-flight customer service dates back to 1970. We always try to make the flight experience something other than what people might dread, Brett Hawkins, a spokesman for Southwest Airlines, told Trending Now in April. Flying can be tough with the security and everything. There have been other notable performances by Southwest flight attendants. Marty Cobb had a notable hit back in April. Companions can also make the airborne treks more difficult, something this attendant was clearly mindful of, saying, quote, "For those of you traveling with your children, why?" Baker asked Lady Moore Lauder from his audience. "And for those of you that are traveling with 2 of your children, what in the world were you thinking?" End of quote. The pre-flight announcement lasted over 5 minutes, and judging by the audible reaction throughout the video, which again we'll be posting, was seemingly met with positively. Online, London has decided to delete any negative comments to his post. This flight attendant deserves the utmost respect for making this flight the most enjoyable I've ever been on. Everyone can learn from him how to approach life with a sense of humor and service. And we at the Evan Miller Report appreciate people like Robert Baker because we know sometimes flying can be stressful, especially when you have to fly all the way from the West Coast over to the East Coast on a 3-hour flight. And don't even get me started on international flying, because I've heard horror stories from people on international flights that take 6 hours, and when you're done with them, sometimes you don't even want to get back on the plane. But congratulations, Robert Baker. Good job on keeping the audience, or as they would say on the plane, the passengers, entertained throughout the flight. And ladies and gentlemen, that is the Evan Miller Report for this Friday, June the 20th, 2014. Thank you so much for joining us on this extended edition of the program. Check out the SHR Media website. That's shrmedia.com. Also check out the Evan Miller Report Facebook page, facebook.com/the Evan Miller Report, for a copy of a good portion of the stories that we did today. You can also tweet us at EM Radio Report. Again, for Corey Evan, Ken McClinton, and Dan Butcher, I'm Jason Miller saying so long from San Diego. Thank you so much for joining us, and we'll talk to you on Monday. So long, everybody.
You've been listening to the Evan Miller Report. For more information about today's program, go to shrmedia.com or thepunditpress.com. Thanks for listening. Hope you tune in again next time.
Conservative media done right. You're listening to the SHR Media Network.